Letters to Lisa. Compilation 2. Recording 4. Jason, the Creep. This letter I'm about to read to you, I almost didn't realize it was one of these sorts of letters. I was about to bin it, as I thought it was an advert for a local solicitor's. However, opening the envelope, I noted my name. I can't say I relate too much to this Jason. I find some of his opinions troubling. However, I'm not sure he deserved what apparently happened to him. If he is still out there, I hope he's okay. Lisa, I don't really know you, but I remember someone said that you could help me, and maybe, I don't know, just maybe you can help me. I don't know how to start this without sounding weird, but I need you to know the whole story. It was the third time I had looked through my neighbor's window. I was excited. Like I usually was, there was the thrill of knowing that I was getting to see that beautiful woman strip for free. It was my own private show, and I didn't have to pay for shit. I made myself comfortable, perched on the house's gas meter box. She had just got back from work, and everything was perfect. I'd become obsessed with her ever since I'd moved into that street. My mum had driven my stuff to my new house, and I'd spotted her. She was watering her garden in sunglasses and a bikini. My mother had not reacted to her in the same gleeful manner I did, coldly stating, "Well, she must be very brave to wear something so revealing in the middle of November." I had smiled at the girl across the street, waving a smart speaker. She smiled and waved back, causing a goofy laugh to eject itself from my mouth. I had waited for my mother to leave, and she was slow to do so. She had cried and she hugged me, causing as big of a scene as possible before driving off. As soon as she was gone, I spruced up, sprayed myself silly with Lynx before grabbing a bottle of wine and heading across the street. I felt sure that this would be just the neighborly thing to do. When I reached her house, the woman was no longer gardening, which was not surprising, as it was dark. The lights in the house were off, but there was a yellow glow coming from the back garden. "Hey, you drink wine? I just moved in. You probably saw." I practiced my little speech as I wound up the courage to walk around the property to the backyard. She won't think it's creepy just coming round unannounced to a complete stranger. No, she's probably having supper in the back garden. It's the polite thing to do. Knocking would just be pointless. I convinced myself of this as I stumbled eagerly onto the uneven concrete of the backyard. The woman was not there. The light had been coming from 4 bug zappers, which seemed incredibly popular that night. I took care as not to step on the piles of little bug bodies that circled the bug zappers. I was about to go back home, feeling defeated and foolish, when an upstairs light flickered on. I squinted upwards. The pale beam escaping from the window cast light onto me as I stood like a rabbit on the motorway, rigid with fear. She's going to think I'm a creep. She's going to think this man, who I've never had one conversation with, is staring into my house from my backyard. I slowly, as though I was invisible, started to move back towards the side of the house. I was about to round the corner of the house when she appeared. She was at the window. I instinctively hid behind a deck chair, which barely obscured my torso. She thankfully hadn't noticed me, the flickering of the zapping bugs probably allowing the noise I made to blend into the background. She stood there, pale, her body reflecting the harsh lighting, but also somehow making her skin seem translucent, as delicate small veins were clear on her figure. I watched as the woman turned twice, clearly watching herself in the mirror before she started to undress. If I had been in a state of embarrassment before, I was in the state of motherfucking fear now. I'd never really had much luck with those of the opposite sex, and this was a moment I'd never dreamt of reaching. She was astonishing. She seemed to luster like nothing I'd ever seen before. She finished disrobing and stood there for a second, studying herself in the mirror before she stepped away from the window. The sound of high-pressure running water could be heard. I took the opportunity to get up, and with all my effort, I tried to get home without running. I also had a shower that night, a long hot shower that helped me relive the bizarre and intimate moment I just witnessed. The next day, I was unpacking when I heard voices. The woman from across the street was chatting to what was supposedly another neighbor. Before she returned to her house, the neighbor walked over to my house and rang my doorbell. I reluctantly opened the door to the guy. He was a short man, clearly between the ages of 60 and 70. He held out a friendly hand. Hey, my name is Dennis. I live at number 23, just near the end of the street. My husband and I saw you move in yesterday. He seemed cheerful, so I shook his hand. Oh, I am Jason Cooper. I just moved out of my mum's house, I added awkwardly, not knowing why I was saying any of this to my new neighbor. The man looked uncomfortable and handed me a large Tupperware. Well, I picked you this as a sort of moving present. I was confused. Are these, looking at the man in front of me, I reckon this would be the last man on earth to hand me weed brownies. Oh, my gosh, I'm so sorry. Are you allergic to gluten or lacking tolerance? Dennis looked worried and embarrassed, opening the Tupperware and showing the immaculate Victoria sponge within. Oh, no! I laughed with relief. I thought you meant... Oh, never mind. I gave Dennis a nod, wondering why this man wasn't leaving. Did you want to come in and use the toilet? The man laughed, shaking his head slightly, as if he was coming out of a daze. Oh, no. I just wanted to see you were settling in okay. It had been a few days since I had moved in, and my kitchen was covered in unwashed dishes and half-eaten takeaways. I had a shave and grabbed a bottle of wine I remembered buying at a corner shop for about $10. In a shirt I deemed fairly clean, I Febrezed myself and left the house. I cautiously crossed the street to the house of the beautiful woman. I knocked on the front door as I nervously kicked at the floor. The curtain of a downstairs room twitched, and a small old lady looked out. I jumped back slightly, startled by the unfamiliar face. The old lady looked at me sadly. I waved at her, trying to be polite. She seemed happy to have me wave at her as she smiled and rather toothless grin, waving a shaky, bony hand back. I turned back to the door, trying not to feel grossed out. I heard light footsteps in quick succession. Then the beautiful woman appeared at the window, moving the old lady away and shutting the curtains. The beautiful lady then abruptly opened the door, smiling at me, although she appeared annoyed by something. I was stumped by her. She was gorgeous. Can I help you? She seemed unimpressed by my appearance. Hi, I'm Jason. I held out the wine. I'm your new neighbor. I moved in just across the street. She looked at me, still confused, before shaking out of the daze. Oh, of course, Jason. Come in, please. I'm Doreen. She let me in and pointed towards the kitchen at the back of the house. I wandered slowly into the kitchen, looking around at the vintage elaborate decor scattered over the house. I noticed the 50s aesthetic of the kitchen, thinking it was very nice. But I'd have an ice machine and dishwasher any day over the chunky chrome fridge and large, robust auger. Nice kitchen, I said, turning round to notice I was alone. Doreen? I noticed you were a keen gardener. I shouted out of the room, not sure where Doreen went. I saw the large back door with ornate colored glass casting green light into the kitchen. I took a closer inspection of the design on the door. I tapped on the glass, trying to see how fragile the design was. As I tapped the glass, the door opened out into the garden. I waddled outside, noticing the dead bugs that lay around the bug zappers. I saw a hammock at the back of the garden I hadn't noticed before. So I thought, whatever, I'll try it out. Doreen won't mind. The hammock swung unevenly under my weight, making me slightly worried that I was too fat for the thin twine underneath my backside. There was a sound of quick running water from somewhere, causing me to look up. Doreen was undressing. Oh, shit! Oh, God! Shit! Crap! Not again! I thought as I panicked. I struggled to stand, but the hammock rocked me, causing me to fall back into it. I swung there, trying not to look at Doreen as she disrobed. I looked up, back to the window. But Doreen wasn't there. The feeling of disappointment welled in my stomach before it was squashed by fear. Had Doreen seen me looking? Should I go back inside so she won't suspect me? I was lying there, half on the hammock, worrying when I felt the hammock swing steadily, like someone would rock a baby to sleep. Looking up, I noticed Doreen standing there pushing the hammock. She was smiling and wearing a big sun hat. I stared up at her, feeling as though I was in the most beautiful place in existence. "You like my hammock?" Doreen said, smiling down at me. I felt that her smile was burning into my chest and causing my cheeks to redden. I spent the next hour and a half sitting with Doreen, chatting with Doreen, and just lying on the concrete in the backyard with her. It felt like less than a minute. She kicked me out eventually, saying she had some paperwork to sort out. I had toddled back over the road. I turned to say goodbye, but saw the old lady standing at the door instead of Doreen. The old lady smiled her goofy, toothless grin and waved a shaky lump of gnarled bones back at me. I spent the next 2 days in a daze. I was grinning like a loon for most of the minutes I was conscious. Doreen was obviously the cause, although I couldn't remember much she had said to me. We had talked a lot about history. She said she had taken history for her SATs. I didn't remember much of my SATs, so I was surprised Doreen had remembered so much from hers. I did remember asking her about the old lady in the house. She said that it was her aunt or someone she had to look after. I remembered the old lady. She had looked so familiar, but I couldn't understand why. I finished my work and drove back, still smiling to myself. I continued smiling until I hit the old lady. I'd been listening to some basic upbeat 80s tunes when I seen a butterfly. It fluttered through one of the open windows and out through another. I couldn't help staring at the blue and beige colors flapping about. I didn't have time to see the old lady. I hit her with a full force, causing her to fly about 10 feet before splattering on the ground. I sat panting, looking up through the cracked windscreen, in shock. Oh, crap! I spent 4 hours in the hospital with the old lady. I got phone calls from my mother worrying about insurance companies, asking very specific questions of me. The old lady was, of course, Doreen's aunt. I felt like shit. I liked Doreen's aunt and obviously liked Doreen. I was still sat there in my blooded work tie and tampons sticking out of my nose, which had seen a lot of damage from a severe nosebleed, when a nurse had run up to me hurriedly and told me the old lady was dead. I'd been expecting the news, but it still felt painful to hear. They tried to ask me a bunch of questions about the old lady, but I barely knew anything about her. Doreen turned up quickly after that. She'd been out of town for the day and must have got the news, as she wasn't quite aware of what was going on. "Jason! Oh, my Lord, are you all right?" Doreen had burst through the hospital doors in a Panama hat and beachwear, clearly not taking time to change before getting there. "Oh, yeah, Doreen, I just want to say I'm so sorry, it's all my fault," I rambled. "Jason, it's fine, okay? It's not your fault. She shouldn't have left the house. She knew that," Doreen said, putting a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Why was that?" I asked, and close to hyperventilating. "Oh, she was blind as a bat. Couldn't see an arm's width in front of her." I felt more relaxed after Doreen said that, lifting some of the blame off me. I stayed with Doreen as she gathered her aunt's things and spoke with the doctors. "She's an angel. How can she put up with all of this?" I thought, as I watched Doreen argue with the doctors. Hey, is everything all right? I asked a passing nurse. Yeah, no, it's fine. This woman wants to take her aunt's body to bury her, but we have to do autopsy on her. Can't find documents stating she didn't want to be donated to science, so the nurse was interrupted as Doreen headed back angrily towards me. We can go now. I'll come back for her in the morning, Doreen said to me as she stomped past me. I smiled a small apologetic smile at the nurse before following after Doreen. Doreen gave me a lift back. I tried to start a conversation, but got little out of her. She might be taking this pretty hard, I thought, as the car turned into our street. Doreen parked the car and sat there, staring hard at the window like she was concentrating on solving a riddle. Her hands moved slightly as though she was figuring something out. She sat there, as though she'd forgotten about me completely. Doreen, are you okay? I asked her, feeling guilty and sympathetic towards her. Sorry, Jason, just a bit flustered, she said all of a sudden. Are you gonna be all right staying in your house without your aunt? I said before realizing how creepy that made me sound. It's fine. My other aunts live with me, so, well, I better go. I don't think they know yet, so we both left the car, and I made my way back to my house. Oh, Doreen, I called before she entered her house. Yeah, she said, still managing to smile brightly at me. You never told me your aunt's name, I almost shouted, even though she wasn't actually that far away. She was called Doris, Doreen said quickly before going into her house and shutting the door. I took the next 2 days off work, claiming that my aunt had died. Well, someone's aunt had died, and I had the damage on my car to prove it. Dennis and his husband, Mark, invited me over for dinner. I had nothing more exciting to do, and my car wasn't going to be fixed till next week. I turned up at their door in the most colorful shirt I could find and a bottle of liqueur my uncle had given me as a present for Christmas. Dennis had welcomed me in with a warm smile and an almost asphyxiating bear hug. Mark had been less sunny. We had a mostly pleasant meal, with Mark opening up more and more to me as the bottles of wine emptied. I told them all about the accident with Doris and how I felt terrible for Doreen. She didn't even cry. She was so worked up, I said almost angrily, clearly slightly drunk by this point in the evening. She never cries, though. She didn't even cry when her mother died, Dennis huffed. She's made of stronger stuff, Mark added. She's that generation that just got on with it, Mark said, stiffly pouring another glass of wine for himself. What generation? I asked with much difficulty. She's what, 40 or something? Dennis said, reaching for the wine bottle, narrowly avoiding knocking it over. But she doesn't look it, Mark added, earning an elbow in the side from a giggling Dennis. 40? No, you guys have got to be wrong. She can't be 40. I almost insisted, clearly remembering her looking younger than myself. She's definitely at least 40, because she's been in this block longer than I have, Dennis said through a fit of giggles. Dennis grew up on this street. We moved back here to be close to his mum before she passed, Mark explained as he tried to wrestle the nearly empty wine bottle out of Dennis's drunken hands. I think you guys are mistaken. Doreen's my age, I said, suddenly feeling sick. Oh, she's not. She was there for my christening, Dennis said with some triumph as he managed to slip the bottle out of Mark's hands and drain the feeble dregs that lay within it. Dennis then scrambled out of the room and returned with an old dusty photo album. He flipped through it feverishly, quickly landing on a page he recognized to be the one. Aha! There, see? My God, she doesn't seem to have aged a bit, Dennis said before flopping into his chair. I slowly peeked at the photo. It showed a baby being held by beaming parents, both looking straight out of the 50s American propaganda. Behind them are probably close friends and family. On the far left of the picture, I noticed Panama hat. On the face the hat was perched on, It was Doreen. It must have been her. No striking family resemblance could get that close to such a perfect face. I felt bolted to the spot. My thoughts only broken moments later by the sound of Dennis throwing up into a toilet in another room. I'm so sorry. He only gets this drunk when he's had a good night, Mark told me, ushering me to the door, looking thoroughly embarrassed. Oh, it's fine. I'm glad he had a good night. Thanks for inviting me. That dessert was amazing, I said, still drunkenly dazed. Oh, thank you. It was my sister's recipe, Mark said, pleased with himself. I wandered back down to the street to my house and fumbled for my keys. There was a muffled sound of an argument coming from somewhere, causing me to stop trying to open my door and look around. I swayed as I looked up and down the street, my eyeline landing on the house opposite. A light at the top of the building was on, and there were a group of women, mostly old, arguing with each other. Must be Doreen, I thought, suddenly feeling low. I watched as the women continued to shout at each other. I couldn't see just how many women there were, but they all bared incredibly close resemblance to Doreen. They ranged from Doreen's age to ancient by the looks of it. As the argument continued, I heard snippets. "Oh, this is not my fault. There's too many of you as it is anyway," I heard one voice say. "Well, they're not coming out alive anymore, so you've got nothing to worry about, you evil bitch." I listened to the back and forth with interest. I tried again with my key, still having no success, so I sat down on a tuft of grass and watched the house across the street. I watched as one of the women ran out of the house and to her car. It was Doreen. She was crying and desperately trying to get into the vehicle. I drunkenly tried to get up, but failed and fell back down as another woman ran out of the house. It was Doreen. Or was it? She looked exactly the same as the Doreen trying to get into the car. I hid slightly behind this hedge, not wanting to interrupt between the doppelgangers. The other women slowly piled out of the house, standing on the lawn, staring at the woman crying at her car. I noticed that they all looked like Doreen, all of them. They were mostly much older than her, all wearing similar clothes, but they all seemed worried. "Come on, come back inside," said one of the older ladies to the lady in the car. As the lady in the car turned and started to run down the street, another lady burst through the crowd of women with a gun and shot the car lady. I sat there shaking with fear, trying not to make a sound. This lady looked most like Doreen, the youngest of the ladies. The older ladies looked worried at this woman. "Get her inside. I hope this is the end of this," she said before turning and going inside. I watched in terror as the old ladies collectively picked up the woman and carried her back inside. After all the ladies had gone back inside, I shakily stood up and tried to open my front door. I realized I'd been trying to use a Lego Star Wars keyring as a key. Falling through my front door, I shut it quickly and ran to the kitchen where I splashed gobs of water all over my face. I stood there shaking, thinking about what I'd just seen. I went upstairs and took a shower. I stood in the shower shaking and tried to calm my breathing. I washed my face all over as I ran my mind over the events I'd just witnessed. The Doreens. She'd killed herself. The thought raced as I lay in bed shaking, trying to get asleep. I woke up the next day feeling awful. My hangover was immense. I had to pee in a cup on the bedside table because I couldn't stand long enough to get to the bathroom. As I lay in my bed facing the ceiling, I vaguely went over what happened the day before. I recalled going to Dennis and Mark's place. Dennis had shown me the picture of Doreen then. I suddenly remembered the grisly scene I'd witnessed while severely drunk. I got up, realized that I was still suffering from a severe headache, held my head in my hands as I stumbled over to the window. I opened the curtains and glared at the all-too-intrusive light that shone back at me. Screwing my eyes up and squinting at the house opposite me, I noticed nothing out of the ordinary. So I got up, stuffed myself into a shirt and trousers, and ran down the stairs and out of the house. I stood there in the middle of the street, staring at the house opposite me. I stumbled and tripped onto the curb. Crawling forward, I felt the concrete. The concrete was still wet, but no longer with the blood of that girl. Somebody, or some people, had washed her blood away. I tried to forget about it. It was clearly my mind getting spooked by all these odd occurrences. I'd be fine in a few days. However, days went by, I went back to work, and I didn't see Doreen. I tried going round several times, but she seemed to be out. I was just about to forget about all of it when I spotted her car coming back late at night. I'd been drinking and I just really wanted to talk to her. I knew she'd make me feel better. She'd explain what was going on, then I'd be relieved and be able to sleep at night. I proceeded to Doreen's confidence that she'd solve all of this and that I was definitely drunk enough to confidently ask her the odd question. Again, there was no response to the doorbell, but there was the noise of the shower. At that moment, I was done for my tired sloppiness, pushing me to go watch her at the window again. After about 3 seconds of internal debate, I slinked into the backyard. Doreen wasn't at the window this time, but I made myself comfortable on the gas meter, feeling like a pig in shit. A small part of me wanted to yell, "What the fuck are we doing? We could get done for this." And the other part of me thought, we should have bought popcorn. Sitting there brimming with excitement, it took me longer than it should have to notice the new sound. It was almost obscured by the shower at first, as it was almost the same pitch. But I could hear it distinctly. It was a scream. Doreen was screaming. Panic swept in. She was screaming, and there was a thudding sound, squelching, tearing noise. I thought, fuck, well, I sort of have to get involved now. I rang to the back door and swung it open, rushing into her pristine kitchen and up the stairs, having no clue where the bathroom was. I just had to follow the screaming. It seemed to be growing with intensity. As I rounded the corner, I bumped into Doreen fully dressed. She seemed upset and nervous, but confused mostly. I was just about to ask her what was going on when I heard the screaming continue from behind a closed door. She looked worried by the interest. I opened the door slowly. It was the bathroom. The shower was running, but Doreen was also in there. She seemed to put on serious weight. She gargled and yelled at me incoherently before the tearing sound became too loud to shout over. I watched in fear as she suddenly split her skin, tearing jaggedly down the middle of her like a snake shedding its skin. There was blood splashed everywhere, and 2 smaller Doreens emerged from her, backing away. I was suddenly aware that the early Doreen was not alone. She was now joined by a crowd of Doreens of a variety of ages. Deciding that this was probably enough interaction with women for one day, I legged it, dodging various Doreens as they appeared from nowhere. I made it out, turning back to the same old Doreen who'd waved before, smiling from a top window. I didn't go home that night, sprinting as far from the neighborhood as I could. I stopped to breathe and calm down when the truck had hit me. So, I'm sadly having to write this to you from the hospital as I recover. My mother has been completely useless about this. Although Dennis has been round, and although he doesn't quite believe my story, he has at least kept me up to date. Doreen, or whoever she is, has had a lot of work done to her garden recently. A lot of trucks coming and going. But she seems much friendlier, apparently. Oh, Lisa, I don't know what any of this means. And I'm worried that if she is still out there, she's after me. What should I do? Well, Jason, I'm as confused as you are about this. Doreen or Doreens. I don't think you should be continuing your peeping Tom activities. Well, that's for sure. That was recording 4. Jason, the Creep. Written by Phoebe Critchlow. Read by Caroline Lawrie.